Well, thank you. That's really lovely, Sue. I appreciate that. I appreciate the prayer too, and and the word of the day, and the song, and the organization that has us here today, the volunteers, and the inspiration that has us here today. Because without that, we'd be watching golf or something. And you know, not that that's a bad thing. My mom loved to watch golf. And while I even didn't like golf, I always loved it when I watched it with my mom. I suspect that wasn't because of the golf, but the fact that we all lived long enough to heal the past so that we had some years of just delight of being in correct relationship again. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced an estrangement in a relationship in your life where, life kind of got in the way, where we didn't handle something masterfully, or maybe we defaulted to a uh, pattern that used to be needed to protect us, or um, we thought. And then sometimes big things come along that really require we step out of that pattern, and we forget because that's what patterns are. They catch us. So I had that with my mom for 40 years. And I'm so grateful that we had another almost 20 from the time I woke up and realized that it didn't matter what had started that. It didn't matter what had happened. What mattered is what was. So I don't know. That's not what I came to talk about today. But just when you bring up the word remember, and when you do all the prayers and all the singing and everything else that was done, life just shows up. And you have to just go, wow, okay, then. I guess if that is what showed up, that's what must be needed. So, uh, the title, Lessons from the Deep End of the Pool, um, that's a really juicy title. And do any of you have an experience like that? Like, one of them was what I did with my mother when I was 14, where I just said, she'll never understand me. And I decided to never let her. I didn't know that. I just did that. And I went, well, I'm not going to let that hurt me again. And then the wall came down, but I was only 14. I didn't know what I was doing, really. It seemed so innocent. I just went, well, to heck with that. But it was kind of hell. It hurt, but I didn't allow myself to know that it hurt. Have you ever done that? Where something hurts or something scares you, but you don't allow yourself to know it? You don't even realize that you're not allowing yourself to know it. You're just in this protection mode, right? I mean, I've got so many. I should write a book about all those things, about all the things that where I foolishly thought I was doing the best I could, only to find out later that I could do more. But then what is life's great lesson? Life's great lesson is to not beat yourself up for what you didn't do when you didn't know what you were doing, but to just learn how to take responsibility. It's not like, oh, well, that's not important. No, of course, it's very important. But what's important is that we love ourselves anyway. You know, that is a huge life lesson. And guess what? We don't get that lesson unless we have opportunities to fall down into the mud and lose ourselves and wander down the wrong boulevard and think we're in a different town, only to find out that no, there we are with the same old person. We just took all that stuff there. So, growing up spiritually is really a piece of work, isn't it? I mean, it's really something. And you know, most of us, I mean, I went to Sunday school, I loved it. But I didn't understand it. I didn't really get what it was. I think our youth churches and our programs in the New Thought movement today, I think, are a little more realistic. Um, but still, we don't really come to grips with what the spiritual power that is available to us in these principles that Sue was talking about. We don't get to understand those until we need to. It's maybe that's just me. Maybe it's really easy. We're all having a good, happy time, and everything's fine. And we go, and then now what are the principles of life? Oh, yeah, great. No, it's usually when our back is up against the wall. It's usually when something is falling apart that we go, there must be another way, right? I think ultimately it's going to be possible that we can learn without adversity. We can learn just because we want to. But we're not there yet. At least I'm not. But I do believe that in this world of unity, which is not a duality, that there is a possibility, there is a future waiting for us to catch up with itself. And that future is one where we know that first principle. And how is it said in unity? The first principle is that God is the source and the creator of all, good, present everywhere. Well, that sounds so nice. And what about when the world smacks you upside of the head with something, or the bottom falls out? Have you ever been in that thing I don't anymore because they're too scary, but in the in the carnivals when they come to town and you stay as a centrifuge, you stand up against the wall and you go, how bad can this be? I mean, really? And then that's a really foolish question. When you ask that question, you should get the heck out of that thing. But anyway, then it starts going, and you go, well, this is not so bad. Pretty soon it's going so fast, your stomach is in your throat, and, you just want to scream, but, then you go, what the hell? It'll feel so much better to scream. And you do, because the bottom just fell out. And screaming is not a bad thing, because it tells you something really important has got your attention. It's got you. It's like making you focus on the thing itself, which is the moment that's going on, and what does it really mean? And so I'm asking you to just bring into your mind an example in your life of where something seemed so untenable, really. It just was like, how in heaven's name am I going to get through this? Or, I have no idea. Or this is bigger than me. Well, of course, it's never bigger than us. And it's always here on purpose. It's always here to grow us up. It's always here to, it's ruthless, really, sometimes, though. It just feels relentless sometimes. And it's easy to get into the mindset that God doesn't love us, which, of course, isn't true. The truth is that we are the place where this infinite power and presence expresses itself. And there is so much potential inside of each of us that it's natural for something inside of us, whatever you call it, to have that urge. I loved how Sue said to lean into that reality, even if we don't understand it, even if we can't get our head all around it. But to lean into it is to court the divine. And I just love that idea of courting the divine consciousness within myself. And so challenge, those big challenges that you just, you think you're handling it, and you wake up and you realize you're worried, or you can't go to sleep because you're worried. Unfortunately, I don't worry too much. I have worried a little bit lately, but I'm working on it. And That's kind of where this talk came from. It takes something to get our attention so that we really focus on where is our faith? What do I really believe? And there's a lot of times where we say, oh, yeah, I believe that. But sometimes you'll notice the following day or the next minute or next week, along comes some demonstration that you don't. Because you wake up worried or you wake up angry or blaming or whatever. And so this is the playpen for spiritual mastery. This is the playpen for conscious evolution. This is the foundation of delight for the infinite, because, there is 100% equality amongst us. We all have the same amount of the thing itself. We're all equally endowed. There's no better version in one country or another, or one economic scale, or one shape, or one age, or one anything. We're born right fully into it, with all of it, and then we become more and more aware of it based on however way we handle those present moments, which are, as the principle has it, all that there is God. Those present moments are merely opportunities to find ourselves. So, so I invite you to bring into your mind a challenge that you had or have that has caused you to experience some dismay or worry, and to notice, what that felt like or feels like. Just notice that. I have a story I'm going to tell you about one of my versions, but I want you to just get this. And I promise you, we're going to work ourselves right back into heaven here in just a couple minutes, or maybe 10. All right. So you bring into your mind the thing that is like, well, but then what? I met Elle shortly after mine happened, about a year, maybe a year and a half. So I was a real strong, independent person, and I owned my own painting contracting company, and I was the first woman house painter in Sonoma County, and I was mighty proud of it too. And I didn't paint just little houses. I learned on little houses, but I painted Victorians, those, big houses with all the colors. And then one day, on the last week of a big job in San Francisco, I had 2 crews at the time, one in Sonoma and one in the city. One day, I woke up to turn my alarm clock off to get in the car to drive to San Francisco, and ruptured my 5th lumbar. It just blew out, just leaning forward to reach for it on the table. It's not supposed to happen like that. It's supposed to be some traumatic thing. I had been setting up scaffolding, carrying up 5-gallon cans of paint, or these big lumber, these big planks of wood and all that stuff. It should have happened then, but it didn't. It happened, at 5 a.m, just leaning over to the table. But it happened. And it brought me to my knees. It challenged everything I knew about myself. It was so scary because I was a single mom. And how am I going to take care of my kids? I couldn't even get out of bed. I couldn't walk. I crawled to the bathroom, which thankfully was the next room. And after about 2 months, I was strong enough to crawl to the car and go to a healer in Forestville, the most amazing man, Will Wells, chiropractor. Just an amazing, amazing man. And his assistant, Patricia Flora, an amazing woman. And God brought me there. And I started my healing. But before that moment came, people would come to visit. I lived in a community of people that we were all single parents for the most part. There was a single person and a couple, but most of us were single parents. And so my kids were taken care of. by the time I got to going to see Will and Patricia, I had given my business to my employees with all the equipment and all the headaches, but not until I spent a month and a half trying to run my painting business from my bed. Just imagine. Now, what are you doing? And how long is it taking you? And, just a little control issue, just a tad. And then people would come to visit, and I would throw books at them, which, of course, made my back hurt even worse. I was so mortified that I wasn't that image of myself that was the one who could set up the scaffolding and go 3 stories in the air with a can of paint. I couldn't even get out from under the sheets. It was mortifying, and it was terrifying. And what if was the name of the game. Have you ever been there? Yeah, most of us have. And the people that are there today who do not have a broader perspective of what's possible in life really do suffer. It's terrifying. It's immobilizing. It's demoralizing. It's destructive. So we are very blessed to have what we have. And more than that, we have a responsibility to remember what we have, and that what we have, so does everyone. We have this responsibility. And adversity is one of God's tools to just get us to build compassion. So this is a very rich experience whenever we're going through the kinds of things we're going through today, whether we're talking about the political world or the economic, collapsing world, or the physically collapsing world of COVID, and the educational collapsing world that's resulted from that. And, who can sort any of that out? It's overwhelming to most everybody. And so what happens when we're overwhelmed is we go back to our fallback positions. We start to doubt again. We go back to that earlier place. In order for us to wake up and understand, where are we really? What do I really believe? What really is faith? Faith has so many definitions, but they all are very simple. Basically, they all say it's somehow trusting the unseen. It's that knowing that behind everything else, like I used to use this definition, above the clouds, the sun is always shining. That was my definition of faith for a while, because when I couldn't remember, I knew that I was held, that I had within me whatever it took. So I use my little outline that we're going to talk about today during our workshop. I can't show you this one because it's taped to my computer, but in the center of that circle, I put the thing itself. What is it that I want to really remember, to use today's word, to never forget? I wrote, faith and grace are attributes of God. Faith and grace. Faith is that belief even when you can't see it. It's the thing that knows that it knows that it knows, and even if you can't explain it, you get it at some cellular level. And grace is the ability to go through these experiences with your faith intact. You lose it, you worry, you get scared, you find it, it's like this fluid thing. And it takes grace to not beat yourself up about that. To just say, wow, I keep choosing this faith, that in this experience is something so important and so powerful for me. I just can't see it. Now, I didn't have any of that when I was lying in bed, not able to move. All I knew was that it was the end. And life, as I knew it, was done, and I didn't have any idea how it was going to go forward, because I was built on that image. I had built my life on that image of myself. I did not know that every bit of that was filled with pure spirit. Every bit of that was the answer to my prayer, that I live a joyful, happy, prosperous life. Every bit of that was the answer to that prayer, because it made me question. It taught me to see what I didn't believe, where I put my fear, and where I didn't claim my good. So when we talk about the wholeness of this one thing called life, we don't mean it's all rosy. We don't mean that it's all, everything is great, even though we sometimes say, yeah, it's good all the time. Well, sometimes it doesn't feel good. These are one of those times when it doesn't all feel good, no matter what window you're looking in on, and then we can feel guilty that we don't feel like it's good. I used to have this card on my bulletin board before I went to Ukraine 20 years ago, and it was a picture of a nun, and she was holding this giant, what looked like a zucchini, but it was functioning more like a winter squash, and it had all these knobby things all over it. And she had this huge thing in her hand, and she said, "You call this a gift?" Because, that's what it is. You've got to look at everything that's going on and remember that at some level, it is a gift. Horrible to have to face that sometimes, because it seems to not be nice to think of a terrible thing as a gift. And it is a terrible thing. The things that we're facing today and are enduring and are going on in our country and around the world, they're seemingly very terrible, and they are having irrevocable results. And yet, it is our charge. In this faith tradition, it is our charge to believe that there is the grace and faith of God in every bit of that. That's a really big assignment. And for me, the only way I know that is to when I find myself tossed into the deep end of the pool, not knowing how to swim, and I'm flailing around, I remember to look around, and I see that rubber inner tube right there. It was there all along. The more I use the inner tube, the more I trust it. I can even learn to swim with the help of the inner tube at first, holding on and then holding on a little lighter, and then just one hand through the hole, and then just, bringing it along with me. But really, it's not doing anything. I'm doing it. It's that relationship of growing our faith by using it in these moments that we feel like there is no solution, or they're so terrifying we can't even face it. So when we're in one of those moments, our assignment is to know what is the foundation that we stand on in our life. What is the base? What is the principle that is the rock of our belief system? And that's the inner tube. Just permeate yourself with that awareness of what that is. Study it, read about it, sing about it, draw pictures about it, pray about it, invoke it, see it everywhere, go look for it, look for where it's working. Because it isn't an abstract thing, it is evident everywhere when you start looking for it. The trouble is, oftentimes we're all looking for all the reasons why life is hard. We need to stop that. We need to look for the ways life is great. So that's the first step. You recognize the challenge, you recognize yourself in it, whether you're flailing or what you're doing, where your faith is, and what is the foundation of that faith. So for me, the foundation of that faith used to be order, but now it's peace. but we'll talk about that another day. But so I have that. So I know that when I'm finally grabbed the inner tube, it's because I've breathed and I've chosen to be peaceful in this moment. And when I do that and I keep choosing peace, I know now to ask myself, what is possible here in this situation? What would I prefer than this? What alternative reality would I like? And if I can't think of it, I go, well, how in heaven's name would the infinite see it? What is the possibility that God knows? And I ask that question. And then something comes to my mind. A new beginning, a stronger foundation, a greater experience. So I invite you to remember that circumstance that you had and where did it lead to? Because almost all of us have the story about the thing that changed our life. It was a nightmare, and then we found the inner tube, and then we got our footing, and then we realized that there was something calling us, called possibility, calling us into growth so we could live that. You can see these steps. And so there's two other pieces. So you see the situation, you recognize yourself, you find the inner tube, you put your feet on the foundation, and then you say, what is calling me? What is possible? And then if you just go, so I'm choosing that. Well, that's nice, but that isn't enough, because just wishing and thinking and hoping doesn't do it, does it? You actually have to change, because that which we have is the result of that which we've been, whether we're talking about a society or one person. You know, we live in a collective world and we create from our individual selves. So just keeping it personal right now, we need to ask ourselves, what do I need to release? What am I doing that's getting in the way of that possibility that's calling me? Well, in my case, I was controlling everything. I wasn't facing my fear. I wasn't facing what my life was really about. I wasn't asking myself anything about that. I was wearing too many masks. They were heavy. I had to put them on and bring some in my lunchbox just in case I needed them. And I had all these protections around me so that I could look good. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. You realize that you're living inside of a mask. It's like, wow, that is hard. But the thing that makes it possible is these principles that we've been talking about. The third principle of unity is that we create our own experiences through the power of our word, through the power of our actions. Yes, indeedy, we do. We get the government we deserve. Now, we don't create and consciously create any of the hardship that comes to us. But at some level, we either allow it or we ignore the warning signs or we, dismiss it. There's all kinds of ways we ignore the signs that our old pattern of thinking is creating results we really would rather not live in. So what is this possibility up there? This possibility is a new way to see ourselves, a new way to have relationship. I discovered that I wanted to be in my mother's life in that moment through a big challenge where I realized that I wanted to be in her life again, that it was possible. So what in your challenge, what is possible in your challenge? How do you want to be different? Maybe, I read an article yesterday. I didn't actually read it. I just read the headlines, but it was about all the learnings from COVID. But I read a couple of things that were about deeper relationship with our family. I mean, we can't escape them. So now that we can't escape each other, we either have to change or we're going to really be unhappy, or, we'll just put in the walls in the living room or whatever. It's not easy what we're going through, but the opportunity is a new way to be, to really understand each other, to care, to learn to get over our fear, to face. So what we have to release is our blame, our fear, our judgment, our guilt. There's so much of that in the air right now. I didn't vote, in 2016, and we can feel guilty about that. Or I didn't go and get tested when I should have, or I didn't plan for the future. I don't have a savings account. Whatever it is, I didn't really know my son. Whatever it is, face it, just go, wow. Because like David Wyatt says in his book, The Three Marriages, there is no shame in making a mistake. There is no shame for seemingly having a failure. The failure or the shame is in not doing something beautiful with it. So we can use these moments that are so difficult to find ourselves, to face ourselves and go, wow, I'm the one that's blocking myself. And what could I do? How could I be that would give me more opportunity to reach this possibility that's calling me? Well, I can start really learning to self-care. I could start learning to love myself. I could discover who my family really is. I could learn to be more interested in them than hope that they're interested in me. There's a great book, and I'm going to be doing a class about it, and it's called Yes, You Can Change the World. And I read it in the past 2 days. It's a short read. I've read it like 5 times. Something yesterday said, read this book. And it's really our teaching. But it starts with every single person is special. Not just the ones you like, not just the ones you agree with. Every single person is special. Well, now there's a challenge. Whether you're living in the living room with them or they're in some big house somewhere else. Every single person is special. Well, that change in perspective will change our life. Totally. The second one says, every action, every decision I make either makes the world a better place or not. There's no in between. There's no sort of. Every action I take either lifts us up or brings us down. Well, that puts a lot of responsibility on, the tone of voice and all those little things we do. And the third says, in every limitation is the gift. When we start seeing whatever we're facing, not necessarily as easy, but it's not the hell we think it is. If we could use our faith and that inner tube of those principles to see the challenge we have as something that's trying to lift us up so we don't sink here, but really like lift us up so we can float and maybe even fly, and brings us to the possibility of a humanity that works for everyone. Imagine that. So I want to leave you with this question. Imagine the wonder of waking up and realizing, and then you finish that sentence, whatever it is you want, realizing that we live in peace, realizing that I am healthy, realizing that life is for me, realizing that there's enough, realizing that we can find our way together, that it's not too late. Imagine waking up. Imagine the wonder of waking up and realizing we believe what we teach. There you have that. Imagine waking up and believing that we create our experience and that we have everything we need inside of us. I believe that we do. And the wonder of that is in the deep end of the pool where I actually am right now in my life. I see the good. I see the possibility. I see the personal responsibility to change. I know where my work is. Instead of trying to get everybody else to do theirs, I see where I have to do mine. More silence, more practice, more joy, more faith. So imagine the wonder of waking up and knowing that this is it. This is heaven. This choice. That's what it feels like. Thank you for your wonderful attention and for allowing me to share my inner tube with you this morning. Short little meditation on the gift of this moment. I meditate with a journal and a pen and an empty page because I get answers. I use questions. And so I ask each of us to just take a breath. I call it peace first. To bring myself into a state of being that is so receptive to the infinite wisdom of life. And then I take 3 or 4 more breaths just to anchor this state of being within me, choosing peace. Choosing peace. Because peace is bigger than the problem. Peace is bigger than the solution I know. Peace is a call to surrender into faith and trust. It's a state of being that allows me to see, to trust, to surrender, to rise up. And the question that I bring to this little meditation is, what's my next step? Knowing the challenge and the possibility and the faith and the release and the embrace, what must I be or become in this moment right now in my life? What must I lean into? And I listen with every part of my being to Spirit speaking, to the wisdom within me making itself known. In silence, we listen. What is mine to be into now? God is life. I am life. God is light. I am light. God is joy. I am joy. God is peace. I am peace. God is love. I am love. God is beautiful. I am beautiful. God is powerful. I am powerful. All of these things God is, I am. All of these things I am. Blessed be. And the resonance within each of us of that power and presence that enfolds and guides and protects, that is all and that is well, that reality has heightened in our time together today, and I give thanks for that, for the realization or the remembering or the deepening of that reality. It is the inner tube. It is that inner strength. It is that faith that resides within us, called forward in moments where healing wants to happen. And so I claim that and accept for myself and each one here that chooses to join me, and for our entire country, that indeed all that appears is not so. And all that is desired already is. And we, in the middle of this connection, every thought and every action and every decision either lifts up that possibility or denies it. I know that that's true, and I commit myself to being as conscious as possible, to know that healing is happening here now, and it's up to me. And it's up to us. And so I release everything unlike this love, unlike this unity that lives in my pattern. I consciously choose to change that more today and going forward than ever before. Because I can, and because it's called for. And so it must be time. I give thanks to the power and presence of spirit that is within me and within each of us and within all things, calling it good, very good, and knowing it out pictures is perfect order and perfect harmony in the land, the inner land and the outer land. All is well. So it is. Thank you. Amen.